Hi, how you doing? I want to apologize for the lighting, but it's raining outside, so it's like very gloomy, but this is the best I can do. I'm so sorry. But today we're doing another guide to video. Yes, apparently I've gotten a taste for it. But today we're doing a guide to the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles, or the Percy Jackson verse, whatever you want to call it. But I saw it called the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles on Goodreads, so I thought I would go with that for the title. I usually revert to it as a Percy verse, but basically the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles is a collective title for some of Rick Riordan's series and books about Greek and Roman mythology. So therefore I thought it would be fun to kind of give you an overview of every main book in this world, because there are a bunch of different little guides and extras that are supposed to teach you more about the world or mythology if you want to. And I'm not gonna go into those because then this video would be way too long. Just even trying to find them all would be a pain in the ass because there's so many. But I just thought I'd talk about the main books, the order everything goes in, and yeah, therefore if you're new to these books, you kind of have an idea of how you should read them and what they're about and whatever. So yeah, let's start with the what they're about. A synopsis for the Percy Jackson series. Basically, the Percy Jackson Olympians, which is the first in this world. In this first series, we follow Percy Jackson, who's always kind of been a troubled kid. He's been kicked out of a couple of schools because he has ADHD and dyslexia, and I don't know, just trouble seems to find him always. And at the start of the first novel, he is on a school trip, and all of a sudden his substitute teacher kind of turns into a not so fun creature, and he has to fight her off. He has no other choice. But then when the battle ends and he kind of rejoins the group again, nobody seems to remember that teacher even existing, and he's like, this is odd, and he gets kicked out of school again, and he ends up telling the story to his mom, and turns out that, she decides it's finally time for him to know he's a half god, and there was this camp that you can go to for that other half gods also go to. And yeah, that's kind of how everything starts. Of course, after these events, a lot of adventures happen with Percy and a bunch of other characters. That's what all of these books are about. In this video, we're going to talk about the Percy Jackson, the Olympians series, the Heroes of Olympus series, and the Trials of Apollo series. And there's two other books that are 2023 releases that fit into this as well. I will also be mentioning the King Chronicles and the Magnus Chase series if you want to read those, because technically they are set in the same universe. But if you want to read those, where I would recommend them, but I won't go in depth about those series because they will be here forever. And I do, once I have read all of Rick Riordan books, also want to just make a video as a guide to Rick Riordan, but I currently am one book behind for that. We're starting off the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles with Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is a series about Greek mythology, based on Greek mythology. And like I said, it has the synopsis that I just gave you basically. And so in this series, we mainly get the POV from Percy. It's third person though, so I'm kind of debating. No, it's first person, so it's definitely all Percy. So the whole series is all told in Percy's point of view. It's also a middle grade series. The books in the series are The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, The Titan's Curse, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and The Last Olympians. I personally really love the Percy Jackson Olympian series. I read it when I was a bit older than its target audience, not much older, but I was a little bit too old for the target audience. And I still loved it because I feel nowadays I see a lot of people saying, I want to read the series, but I feel I missed the boat because I didn't read this when I was the target audience. And I generally don't think this is a series you have to be in a target audience for, because it transcends it all. Yes, a middle grade audience will pull the most enjoyment out of this and relate to it the most because they are going through the same struggles. But I feel as an adult, I would enjoy them just as much without the nostalgia attached to it, because I didn't grow up on these books either. I read them in high school. So yeah, but I still absolutely love them and just devoured them. Just so fun, quick, easy reads, and you learn so much about mythology. And I'm not saying everything is perfectly accurate. Definitely Rick Riordan does twist some things to kind of fit his narrative better, but still I think it's a great basis of learning from mythology. What's fun with this series is that each book's basically set in a different year, so there's a year between each book. Basically it's not exact but therefore you can see Percy like kind of like growing up, and the side characters also grow up, and it's a lot of fun. It's fun adventures, and yeah, I highly recommend this series because they are generally so much fun, and I think so funny as well. Like Percy is one of the funniest protagonists I've ever read from, and I love the narration style because it generally just feels like a kid just telling you what happened to them. Okay, so according to Goodreads, I'm gonna do a little interlude here because according to Goodreads, you can read the King Chronicles at this point if you want. The King Chronicles is a series that wrote around Egyptian mythology, but there is a big crossover event of 3 novellas that do kind of follow the same story, so it's like one story. But the 3 novellas are The Son of Sobek, The Staff of Serapis, and The Crown of Ptolemy, and they're bound up in Demigods and Magicians, which is how I read them. And I feel like Demigods and Magicians references a lot of the heroes of Olympus, so I feel like you should read that afterwards, but like Goodreads puts them in the timeline in between these 2 series, but I think it should be after Heroes of Olympus, so I put it here. I'm just saying that's a quick interlude to say Goodreads thinks you can read the King Chronicles here. I don't. Then we arrive at the second series in this world called the Heroes of Olympus series. This one is a combination of Greek and Roman mythology, and we have multiple POVs in this series. It's also told in third person, and it's a YA series, like definitely YA. I want to preface that. It's nothing inappropriate ever happens in these books, but I do think that after, like with Heroes of Olympus, and especially after, these books get much darker. Like the Percy Jackson Olympian series, even though there is like a big war at the end, it is all very lighthearted in tone and like nothing too serious. But like after the Heroes of Olympus, we get into some drama sometimes. The books in the series are The Lost Hero, The Son of Neptune, The Mark of Athena, The House of Hades, and The Blood of Olympus. In this series, we follow 7 main characters, and I'm not gonna explain too much to avoid spoiling, but basically some things going up between like the Greek and Roman personalities of the different gods, and we find out that there's a different camp for Roman half gods, and we kind of just like have to figure shit out there. And I really again love this series. I feel like you can tell that this is YA and not middle grade because I feel like the stakes are very high. I live very much on the edge of my seat throughout the entire series. We deal again with a lot more difficult, not necessarily subject matter, but we do some more difficult tasks, if that makes sense. There are some more, like I said, it's because it's higher stakes, everything just feels life with that, which wasn't the case with the first series, and it's just so great. And also because you got multiple perspectives in this one, I think that's so much fun. And yeah, it's also fun to see our characters of the first series kind of more as like teenagers instead of like middle grade age kids, even though they've been growing up to the entire series. Like it's definitely like teenage shit in this one. We also get some relationship stuff because there is a hint of romance in the original series with Annabeth and Percy, and then this one we kind of get more, because again they were following teenagers, we get actual like relationship stuff and relationship drama and like more like wishes and what's happening. And I think that's also really fun because I feel like Rick Riordan knows how to do all of that while still having like it not take over the plot. I feel like in a lot of YA the romance tends to take over the plot, and that is definitely not the case for this series, which brings me to the next point of another interlude, because at this point after the Heroes of Olympus series I recommend you could read Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, which is Rick Riordan's Norse mythology series. And this one is kind of important because Magnus is Annabeth's cousin. So Annabeth and Percy show up a couple of times in the series. Annabeth mostly, Percy only in the last book. But they're like small appearances, they're nothing too necessary. And the timeline of Magnus Chase kind of matches up with the Trials of Apollo series as well, which I'll be talking about in a minute. So it'd be, if you really truly want to avoid any hint of a spoiler, try finding publication order and reading it that way. But I don't think it's fully, I read the Trials of Apollo first before Magnus Chase. It's not like I'm going to, but like just from like the small mentions, I think it's best to read here. So then we have arrived at the last full series, which is the Trials of Apollo series, which again is a combination of Greek and Roman mythology, but I feel like it's more Greek mythology and Roman history, because in this one the Roman emperors show up, and I'm not going to tell you much more than that because that would be heavy spoilers for the Trials of Apollo series. But in this series we obviously follow Apollo's POV, who got sent down to Earth in the body of a teenager as a punishment for the events of the Heroes of Olympus series, which I'm getting delve too much in depth for that, but that's about anything. It's another YA series, and this is one that definitely goes into like death and trauma, but the books in the series are The Hidden Oracle, The Dark Prophecy, The Burning Maze, The Tyrant's Tomb, and The Tower of Nero. This is another series that I really loved. Something I really liked about this series is that we kind of get to follow Apollo, who is a god. So he is not used to being in a mortal body, even though he has done it before. It's been so long ago that he does not remember shit about it. And I love kind of seeing him find the humanity in himself throughout the series, and seeing his growth throughout the series was amazing. And then alongside him, we get his BFF sidekick Meg, who is absolutely fantastic, and I loved her as a side character as well. And their friendship is the foundation of the series. There is little to no romance in this. Like, there is romance in this as in side couples show up, but there is no main romance in this. Apollo or Meg are not in a relationship at any point in the series. So if you absolutely don't like romance, this is definitely a series for you, because the main focus of the series, relationship right, is the friendship between Apollo and Meg. And I really loved seeing that play out throughout the series as well. And it's such a cool series, and it's something I definitely recommend. Again, feels more high stakes but still like a fun time. And then for the newer additions to this world, so basically the two 2023 releases, one of which is out already, the other is yet to come out. The first one is The Sun and the Star, which is also co-written by Marco Shira, and in this one we follow Nico, and we get a little bit from Will's perspective as well, but mainly it's told through Nico's perspective. And this is a standalone adventure, but it does take place after the Trials of Apollo, and the setup for this book is done in the last Trials of Apollo book. This book deals a lot with trauma, and is basically a journey of Nico learning to face his demons in a way. And then we also have The Chalice of Gods, which comes out September 26th, 2023, and it's technically the 6th book in the Percy Jackson The Olympian series, but again, the plot for this one is set up at the last Trials of Apollo book, so it takes place after all of that, and basically is one last adventure following Percy, Annabeth, and Grover as they're about to go off to... So Percy kind of wants to go off to college in New Roman, which is something we established in the Heroes of Olympus series, and to do that he has to go on this quest first. And I'm very excited for this book to be released, but therefore you also know where this goes. That was everything you basically need to know about the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles. And yeah, definitely feel free to discuss these series with me in the comments, because I didn't really go in depth about my thoughts on these books like I did with my Iron Fae World guide, because for example, like the Percy books has been so long and I don't have my reviews of those anymore, so I can't really go back and look at my thoughts when I read those, sadly enough. So I find it hard to like structure a video around my thoughts when I don't have them from back then, because now everything is like muddled and like together, and like I can't remember which thought belongs to which book exactly. So therefore I kind of like try to give like small reviews for each series instead. But I would love to discuss these books with you in the comments if you have thoughts, spoilery, non-spoilery. Just if you're gonna talk spoiler, leave a spoiling warning at the top of your comments so people who watch this video and have not read the books yet know not to read your comment. I prefer it if also in a spoiler warning you'd mention which series or which book you're spoiling in specific. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.
Here I am again, the same old situation. Why does the God thing have to be so complicated? Sure.